and it's lovely. But there's something about pulling up a whole lettuce, which is just really satisfying, and you get everything in that lettuce. Because, I mean, I've spent hours over the kitchen sink washing every single tiny leaf of my rocket mustard mix. Mind you, mustard's a good one. That does taste really good, small. But with a big lettuce, you get the outside leaves and you get the inside leaves. You get that whole bit in one go. So I just grow Webb's Wonderful. It's a classic old variety, and I would grow that 30 centimetres apart and then just take one at a time and sow a handful every couple of weeks and just have a constant supply of that. I just think that's so much less effort than sowing lots of little rows of cut and come again, going out with your little nail scissors, cutting them down, and then ending up with an egg cup. I've got quite pragmatic over the years, I think, about it all.
Yeah.
With strawberries, I've said I wouldn't bother with strawberries. I mean, if you don't have any option but hanging baskets, they're good in hanging baskets. But I just find they're a bit of a magnet for pests.
Because you talk about the edible flowers, and I get the idea that you use what you grow. It's a worthwhile endeavour for you from a culinary perspective. But I must ask you, what is your favourite cocktail that you make using the edibles?
Oh, okay. Well, I drink a lot of herbal teas. That's not really a cocktail, but I do drink a lot of herbal tea. So every autumn, I will strip the lemon verbena and dry them in the boiler room. And then I just put them in a jar, and I have that a lot. And I love that. I also make herbal tea out of mint. I grow a lot of mint. My favourite one for tea is black peppermint, which is brilliant. So I do a lot of herbal tea. Cocktails-wise, I remember making a Bloody Mary once from the garden, which was just incredible. I mean, it was mainly garden. It was just basically herbs and all sorts of things. But I had like a lovage stem, thyme, parsley, oregano. It was really herby, and that was amazing. I loved that. And yeah, the physalis are quite fun if you want to show off. You can chuck those in the top of a little cocktail. Any of those sort of lime basil, lime balm, lemon balm, any of those things make good syrups for cocktails if you can be bothered, really. And it's a kind of can you be bothered situation. I just think for herbal tea, it's so easy just to get a few leaves, chuck it. I don't bother making a teapot or anything. I just put them literally in the cup and pour hot water over it. And obviously mojitos, I mean, mint. And you can't really go wrong with that. And I made, that's right, mint juleps. They're really good. And I didn't know about those. But again, it's just mint, but whiskey. It's got to be bourbon and sugar. And it's really good. So basically mint.
I think that you grow things practically, but I get the impression as well that you see things as aesthetically important as well as gastronomically important. And I wondered what some of your most favourite visually pleasing combinations were.
Well, when you're writing a book, you obviously have to think as well about making it look nice. And also, if you do have a small space, you do want it to be pretty because, you know, that's why edible flowers are quite good because they do make things look nice. Runner beans always look really pretty as well. Tomatoes and hanging baskets can look pretty as well. So in terms of combinations of things, well, this isn't a combination, but I was surprised how pretty samphire can be in a window box. I'd never thought I could grow that. And I always thought it was a bit of a pretentious, expensive thing. Well, it is expensive, but you can grow it from seed in a window box. As long as you water it with salt water, but it has to be sea salt. If it's not sea salt, apparently it dies. It grows really well in a window box, like a little succulent. If you want things to look pretty, if in doubt, herbs, runner beans, and tomatoes. What I realised is if you want a space to read, like seem edible, you have to be quite obvious with it. Because like you can go to someone's balcony and it can be really productive and lovely, but it doesn't look like it's an edible balcony. In order to kind of convey a sense of it, you do have to plant things which scream edible at you. And that is tomatoes, strawberries, courgettes, something that you literally can see. When obviously a lot of edibles are just little green plants, you know, herbs or potatoes aren't very pretty, are they? So it is a difficult one with the aesthetic thing. And I think you can go so far with the prettiness thing. And again, I think a lot of that can be done through using vertical space because you can put lovely hanging salad wall planters up there or hang pots on the wall. I mean, I discovered Spanish rings, which are these little metal rings. You literally just put your terracotta pot in and then you can hang it on the wall. So I got some panels of weld mesh from the builders merchants and just hung them up on the wall. And then I could hang with S-hooks from Builder's Yard. I could hang catering sized tins with holes in on this thing and basically made a kind of mini like those old Mediterranean villages where they have all the pots with the pelargoniums. You can do that with herbs and stuff like that and mix a few flowers in. So I mixed in some geraniums, some pelargoniums, some herbs, chili plants. They also look lovely because you've got the red, the yellow. So if you want it to look nice, you've got to think about the fruits they're creating and what you're going to see, and obviously flowering things. So that's often herbs. Using your vertical spaces, hanging up things on the wall, using railings, using every single space you have. And don't be afraid to cram things in if you want it to look good. But remember that things don't always grow best if they're crammed in. And sometimes things get mildew if they're too crammed in. The air around them becomes too still, and that causes mildew. So you can make things look really pretty, but I do think there's sort of shortcuts to it, and those are planting things that look obvious, really.
What I was saying about it being quite an inspirational book in terms of the way people have found remedies for small spaces is very kind of inspiring. It was really lovely to see Isaiah Levy in your book.
Oh, yeah.
Who sadly passed away earlier in the year. So it was really nice to see him captured in the book. I just wondered if you could tell us what it was like to meet him and see his garden, because it looks incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously it was really shocking to hear that he had died earlier this year. Last summer, I went round to his garden in Croydon, and it was just brilliant. I mean, it had such an incredible energy about him. The way he approached growing food was just so fresh and exciting. Like, he just said, I just wanted it my own way. I just do what I basically feel like doing. I think that all of the rules put people off. So he had all these crazy ideas, which I just loved. Everything was grown in supermarket bags with his own compost he made. He never bought anything. He would go to coffee shops and get coffee grounds. He would go to old chocolate factory and come back with cocoa husks. He would go to takeaways and come back with mussel shells, prawn shells. And he made his own feeds by baking banana skins and mussel shells up in the oven and then crushing them with a pestle and mortar. He started seeds off in Tupperwares. He didn't sow them in the ground. He sowed them in Tupperwares on damp kitchen roll in his sitting room.
I saw that in the
and
book,
then he put them out. And I was saying, but surely they're going to die off. But I just loved the way he just went it on his own tip. And his garden was just amazing. And walking on it was like being on a trampoline, because of the extent of mulch he'd laid on there over the years. It was so spring. It was like being on those kids' playgrounds where it's all that bouncy stuff. And he just brutalised these fruit trees. He just hacked them to make them fruit. He had like 20 or 30 in this tiny garden, all different sorts of fruit trees, pears and plums and cherries and God knows what, figs and things. And to keep them small enough, he'd just hack them back. And he just said he was inspired by his journeys to Jamaica as a kid, and his relations. He said, keep on going, or something is the way they do it. And he'd done it like that. So, no, it was really lovely to meet him. Incredibly sad and shocking to hear that he died. And he really was a quite interesting character. And you don't meet many people who are doing things their own way to that extent in the world of gardening.
No, you don't.
You don't. And gardening, because gardening is, it is expressive. It is expressive, but it is quite rules driven. And I think when people throw out the rule book, it's exciting. And of course, some of those things aren't going to work, but otherwise we all go around slavishly following everything we read. And it's very easy to do that. And I do that. I know I do that. And I try not to do it, which is why I've got obsessed with doing my own experiments now, because it's very easy to even subconsciously not even realize you read something. And sometimes I want to think, God, we've all got to do it. Do you actually know for sure this is going to work?
Yeah.
Which is why I like collecting weird aphid experiments in jars and stuff. It's sad, but at least I then know what actually happens, So I love doing those sort of little things where you hone in and really analyse how a plant works, because that's how you learn. It's hovering and diving, isn't it? It's like you hover over the whole subject, but then you've got to dive down, and that's how you learn in gardening. So yeah, just learning it in your own way. That's what I love about meeting him. And that's what I love about gardening in general, and the expressiveness of growing in small spaces, is that it's my space. I'm going to do it my way. And who cares if it doesn't work as well? Like, what's the worst that can happen? You're not going to have any strawberries. Do you know what I mean? It's not the end of the world. And it gives people so much happiness when they grow their own stuff. And it's so satisfying, even if it's just a few herbs or whatever. The book, I hope, will be helpful, is that I have really tried to be quite practical and quite sensible about it, because I do think sometimes you read stuff and see pictures which are not realistic, of, things that have been styled up last, literally 5 minutes before. There's always pressures to make things look pretty, but I did try with this book to, try and be helpful and like okay, we didn't have a stylist on it or anything. So I just sort of did my best to try and make things look vaguely quite nice. But I was really just thinking, what's realistic? What can people do? What's worth it? What's worth the hassle? So that's what I tried to put in there.
A very big thank you to Alex for sharing her knowledge, and if you'd like to find out more about crops in tight spots and her other work, you can check out her website, which is alex-mitchell.co.uk. Now, before you go, I'd like to ask for your help. Yeah, I know, again. But this is an easy one, really, and I know I've asked before, but if you like this episode and you can spare a couple of minutes, I would be really grateful if you could rate it and, if possible, write a review wherever you happen to listen to your podcasts. And also, as I suspect some of these podcast top charts are a bit bollocks and don't necessarily reflect the podcasts that people are really interested in and are actually listening to, so we can spread the word about Roots and All, would you consider sharing one of your favourite episodes on your social media accounts, or even mention it to the person you sit next to on the bus or someone you meet at a gardening group or wherever? It is difficult for relatively new podcasts, which this still is, to be heard above the noise of the big boys in this increasingly large sea of podcast programs, and that would really help me to reach new people. And I am reliant on you lovely listeners to do my marketing because I can't afford to, so I am really grateful to those of you who already go out of your way to support me and the podcast, and I think you know who you are, and I could always use more voices. So thank you as always for listening, and I will catch you next Tuesday. You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website www.rootsandall.co.uk, where you'll also find my blog and a sign-up form for the newsletter, which gives you a weekly roundup of content, plus the inside scoop on things like upcoming guests. Or you can subscribe wherever you normally get your podcasts. Email me with comments and feedback at podcast@rootsandall.co.uk. Follow me on Twitter, Roots and All, Facebook, Roots and All UK, and Instagram, Roots and All Pod. But please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support my work, because if you like what I do, please help me to continue doing it. Even if you make a one-off donation of £1, trust me, it all helps, and I will be immensely grateful. So please go to Patreon and search for Roots and All.